Welcome, everyone, to episode 65 of the Thundercraps podcast, where we forge through the shitstorm that was WCW Thunder. I'm your host, the Shaolin Monks of podcasting, Josh Kaiser. And joining me today, a big Neanderthal piece of crap, Kyle Hoagland.
What's happening, everybody? You know what? Truth be known, we've had some pretty shitty Thunders. And don't get me wrong, this is not going to go down in the annals of history as a barn-burning classic Thunder. But I will say that for a pre-tape show, I will say this is middling to decent, and I'm actually really looking forward to talking about this one, just because it just feels like I'm actually going to say that like this felt more like a wrestling show, and I like talking about wrestling shows.
Yeah, I would agree with you there. So that's, if you want the quick nickel review, it's right there. It felt like a wrestling show, a decent wrestling show. Middling, I think, is a good way of putting it. But yeah, so that is Thunder 65. It is June 3rd, 1999. And it's a pre-taped show. We're pre-taped in Charleston, South Carolina. We're 10 days away from the Great American Bash. Of course, Kevin Nash.
Or as Piper would call it, Bash at the Beach.
We got Nash and Savage for the world title. We've got Piper and Flair. So, a lot of marquee matches. And this show is going to open up with wrestling, as you mentioned. And, a lot of this show is going to be wrestling. And that's okay. I think we kind of expect that formula on pre-taped Thunders is to have a lot of wrestling, which I'm fine with. As long as it's good wrestling,
No, absolutely. I think usually the formula is a lot of recap followed by a lot of wrestling. But I said we'll talk more about it later. I'm very surprised by the number of matches we actually get, though, on the show. I think it's maybe the one complaint I had for the show.
Yeah, fair enough. The opening bout, Scotty Riggs, of course, he's a staple, I think, on pre-taped Thunders. He'll be wrestling Bam Bam Bigelow. It's pretty much what you can expect in a match with Scotty Riggs. He is going to do the job here, but I gotta appreciate a couple of things. I thought Scotty Riggs was fine as far as is doing the job in this, but I loved that commentary noted that Scotty Riggs hasn't had much success since leaving the flock, because I feel like their storyline forever was every guy had success after leaving the flock, and Scotty Riggs would be probably the number one person I'd say that has not had that success.
You're right, because Ron Reese has been a multiple-time champion since he's left the flock. Yeah, I think did he even come back? Has he been around since the flock?
No, I don't think he has, actually, now that you say that.
I don't think they've wrapped him in toilet paper for a second time.
Yeah. We also find out that Larry Zbyszko would rather travel the Ho Chi Minh Trail than meet Bam Bam Bigelow in an alley. So that is another Vietnam reference that we're getting from old Larry Zbyszko here. Greetings from Asbury Park is going to get Bam Bam the 3 count. I gave it 2 stars. I thought it was a solid opener. I thought Bam Bam looked good, and, Riggs was fine in the job.
I agree. I gave it 2 1/4, decently competitive. I envisioned this match to be worse than it ended up being. And I also got to give credit to Bam Bam, because one thing I think I've noticed about Bam Bam Bigelow is that no matter who he wrestles, he still wants to be in the ring for a decent amount of time. He's not the type of person who does a 45-second squash normally. So usually he will at least put over some offense. I think I remember maybe like a month and a half ago, he wrestled Evan Courageous on Thunder. And it was like a 6-7 minute match that probably had no business being a 6-7 minute match. But they told a story. That's one of those things where it's like, if you're going to tell a story about, absolutely Scott Nortoning somebody, then sure, I get it. Make it a 1 to 2 minute match and just bulldoze them. But if you're not going to do that, or if they say, hey, we're going to give you 6 minutes. One thing I will say that Bam Bam Bigelow was always very good at is no matter how big or imposing, and maybe that's a trait, a thing I admire to a fault, because maybe if he did wrestle more like a badass and just decimated people, like maybe he would get a little bit more popular. But because he's kind of selling he's kind of Lex Lugering, his offense, where no matter who he goes up against, I think he always wants to make sure that both wrestlers look legit or as legit as they were when they came in as they did when they left. So this definitely felt like a match that didn't need to be 7 minutes or something like that, whatever this was. But once again, it's one of those things you gotta kind of appreciate the professionalism of Bam Bam Bigelow.
Yeah, no, that's all a great point. Speaking of Bam Bam, after this we get our first replay of the night. It's DDP and Bam Bam Bigelow. They wipe out Canyon in the back. There's apparently a tag match, but Canyon is going to make it back in. He's going to be Saturn's partner in this tag match. But he's, from the beating, he's not 100%. He gets into the ring, and one punch, he's knocked out, and that is how Saturn and Raven lose the tag titles.
Two things about that. One, how sad of a way to lose the titles. And two, he's not even the tag champion. It's Raven. I guess they have sort of a Freebird rules with this particular title. I think we did see Canyon do that the last Thunder we reviewed, where they were taking turns wearing the sunglasses or the stupid shirt that you would have worn in 1999. Where like Raven and Canyon were just kind of taking turns being in the match with Saturn. So I guess there's some legitimacy to it. But I always thought it was a funny little promo that they did on Nitro where DDP and Bam Bam just fuck up Raven and they throw him in a garbage dumpster or whatever bin. And then after they do that, they go to the ring and they're like, "Oh, we're going to challenge for the tag titles." Like, dude, you just laid out one of the guys. Like, how are you supposed to have a match when one of the guys is in the hospital? And then Kane's like, "It's okay. I'll defend him. I'll defend it for him." And then they beat the shit out of him. And I just thought that was always just like a weird idea. Like, if they can't come to the ring, you can't have a match, bro. But I guess they Canyon was able to get up. He is a professional wrestler, obviously. But I just felt bad that like he gets tagged in. I think everybody in the crowd was cheering, like, "Oh my God, Canyon's back!" And Canyon's all fucking fired up as shit. He's pumping his fists. He's like hulking out in the middle of the ring, and then he turns around and he literally just gets punched in the face by DDP, and that's your match.
Yeah, not a good look, but I guess, I mean, it protects everybody in some regard, and it puts the titles on Paige and Bam Bam, which is what I think they really wanted here, so I'm fine with it.
I mean, I guess it had some comicalness to it as well. Like that, it felt like Canyon was like some like almost like a Disco Inferno, like lovable loser, type of thing. Like, well, here he is, he's ready to get in here, and he's all fired up. He gets punched in the face once, and it's over.
After this, we get our Saturday Night promo. We find out Buff Bagwell and Rick Steiner are wrestling. We got Kidman, Fit Finlay, and Brian Knobbs in action, which is going to lead to our next replay of the night. It's Brian Knobbs on Nitro. He's taking out Hack, and with a trash can, it looks like there's a hardcore match taking place. Not really sure who was involved with what, but ultimately we're finding out Brian Knobbs is Mr. Hardcore now.
I think it was, what was weird about it was that Kidman was involved, and I don't know why, but like I thought it was Hack versus Hugh Morris, and then Kidman just kind of showed up, and then Hack was in the ring, and then I think it was Brian Knobbs came in, laid out Hack. So I really have no idea what the match actually was.
Yeah, I'm not sure either, but oh well. That does bring us to our next match, Hugh Morris wrestling Kidman. As you know, Hugh Morris has a thing against cruiserweights, apparently. This match is going to show Kidman's speed and Hugh Morris' strength. Jimmy Hart, of course, is going to get knocked off the apron, so take a drink. Ultimately, Kidman is going to show his speed. He's going to get some reversals in there. He's going to head to the top for a shooting star press. And Brian Knobbs with the interference, Kyle. So we have our answer after so much deliberation.
After one fully taped show, we got our answer.
Yep. And he is part of the First Family. I gave the match 2 stars. I thought it was actually an all right match before the DQ finish, and actually I thought the DQ finish made sense. We're telling a story, and for the people in Charleston here, they actually got to see the whole thing kind of play out. So I was fine with it. Like I said, 2 stars, and I thought it may have been one of Hugh Morris's best looking No Laughing Matters.
Yeah, I almost put that in the notes. I totally forgot about that. Thank you for adding that too. I actually gave this 2.5 stars. I actually was really digging this match. And like you said, I can't be too upset because the interference did at least further a story involving Knobbs and the First Family. There was a part of me that felt it was a shame that Kidman had to get kind of shit on in the wake of all this story. But at the same time, Hugh Morris needed to fight somebody. He needed to be in a match where he would be in some sort of trouble losing. And Kidman definitely fits that description of, maybe a giant killer type of guy, kind of like a Rey Mysterio, who I wouldn't be shocked because I think Kidman has a little bit more pull, maybe a little bit more value in WCW in 1999 than Hugh Morris may right now. So, which I shouldn't say may. He does have more value in the company than Hugh Morris does. And the match itself was pretty fluid, if not cookie cutter for those two. And yeah, I guess it's cool to watch a guy like Hugh Morris, who clearly, he's a big guy, 300-pound dude, but still has like some, obviously has extraordinary agility and speed, and just the ability to move around in comparison to other guys his size. And it was good to kind of have a guy like that with a cruiserweight, because not only did Hugh Morris look like a shit brick house just, bodying Kidman the entire time, but he still was able to show off a lot of his agility in a match with a guy who, also can match him, for agility as well.
It's a great point. They do, for his size, he does have that. So that's maybe something people don't always think about. So I think that was that. Every once in a while you make a good point. So
appreciate it. Thank you.
After the match, Hack comes in to help save Kidman. So we're continuing to, Hack looks like he's feuding up here with the First Family. So he might be a mistake taking on such a prestigious stable as the First Family.
But then Hack takes out Kidman anyways. And I don't know if it makes sense because Hack doesn't give a shit. Like he just went out there because he wanted to beat up everybody else that was in the ring. And Kidman was just like, oh, thanks, buddy. And then he just got nailed with a kendo stick. Once again, kind of that same argument of I'm not a huge fan that they picked Kidman for all this because, for the most part, Kidman got laid out. And it was like one of those things where maybe it would have been better off if maybe like Hack and Kidman just kind of stared down each other, and then that was it. Like Hack goes his own way. But then again, like if they're going to invest, Hack as a character, I guess make him into a loose cannon guy who's like, I don't give a shit who's in the ring. Like I'm going to fucking blast whoever I want. But I don't know. It did kind of rub me the wrong way. I guess how Kidman was portrayed for that 10 minutes that he was in the ring, both in the match and after the match. I'm sure it's not going to affect Kidman all that much. But it was just kind of something that creeped in my mind towards the end of this match.
Oh, I didn't think about it, but I guess I see what you're saying. After this match, we get Bryan Adams and Buff Bagwell in action. We do go to a commercial in the middle of the match. After Buff Bagwell, on his push these days, he's kind of got the advantage. We see what may have been the slowest tilt-a-whirl I think I have ever seen in the history of tilt-a-whirls. And it did not win the match for Buff or for Bryan Adams. So I'm going to assume that maybe because he did it so slow, it wasn't actually his real finisher. Bryan Adams is going to go to the top rope. That's not going to pay out well. Mickey J is going to get knocked out. So here comes the shenanigans. Bryan Adams is going to grab Buff Bagwell. Vincent's going to go for a chair shot. Buff Bagwell is going to duck. Bryan Adams is going to take that chair shot. It's vicious. I think he's probably still got CTE from that, I'm sure.
Hulk Hogan was very proud of that chair shot.
There's your 3 count, or was it? Apparently the match is going to keep going on. Vincent gets taken out. Bryan Adams is going to get distracted by Mickey J. He's going to take the blockbuster. There's your 3 count. I gave this a star and 3/4. What the fuck was this?
I actually rated this match twice. From the original ending where I was like, oh, the screw is in, because it definitely looked like he counted to 3. But here's the funny thing. I went back and watched it again. Mickey J does count to 3, but clearly Bryan Adams kicks out. Mickey J doesn't sound for the bell. He doesn't like indicate that, hey, ring the bell. The bell rings anyways, and Buff Bagwell's music just plays. And you would think that in the production, everyone knows the finish, or at least everyone should have an idea of what the finish is. And it's like, okay, there's no blockbuster. There's Mickey J's not asking for the bell. Maybe we heard. I mean, obviously we heard him hit the mat 3 times. So that's the timekeeper going, well, there's your 3 count. But I think he got a little bit overzealous, and the match ended. And then so we're listening to the music. But then but you can tell something went wrong because Bryan Adams basically popped up almost immediately after taking the chair shot in the 3 count. And then there's Buff Bagwell still taking on Bryan Adams, and Mickey J is still looking like this match is still going on. So it was really, really fucking confusing. But even at that point, I'd given it 2 stars. I kind of put down it's kind of generic. I don't think either one of them looked great. And I've always I think at this point, Bryan Adams needs something than just Bryan Adams in 1999. I get it that we're kind of past the whole, like, I guess, cartoonish-y kind of characters. But Bryan Adams is about as white bread of a power guy as you're going to see in 1999. And we have enough of those types of guys on the roster, so there's no way for Bryan Adams to, like, break away in order to, like, get anywhere else other than just being that big, tall, stupid guy in the black and white. Buff didn't look all that fluid. That may have more to do with Adams. And like I said, that chair shot was just, it was so bad. It was just so bad. And then they restarted the match, and I'm like, fuck, this is going to make the match worse. I would have just said, fuck it. You already made your bed, just fucking lie in it. Like, it's whatever. Let the chair shot be the ending. That's a believable ending. But instead we get like this whole what the fuck's going on, and then the blockbuster for the win. So I had to drop it down to a star and 3/4 as well.
After this match, we get our second replay of the night, maybe third replay of the night. We've got Kevin Nash, and I use that in quotations as it's a dude wearing a dress and kind of looking like Kevin Nash, wrestling Savage on Nitro. And Savage is going to hit the top rope elbow, which we found out is banned. Gotta say, I didn't know that top rope elbow could ever be banned, but here we are.
I think the story behind the ban was because he dropped it on Charles Robinson, remember? And Charles Robinson had like a collapsed lung, and then he showed up on the very next Thunder, and then he was gone from TV for 2 more weeks after that to sell this, collapsed lung storyline. And so they felt that they should just jackknife powerbomb storyline. Because remember when the jackknife was banned and it was such a great idea? So let's just do it again with the elbow drop.
At least with the jackknife, it made sense, but whatever. After this, speaking of power bombs, we get Scott Norton in action against Silver King. This match is going to go about as well as you can imagine. Power bomb for the 3 count. Silver King has his big spot where he does a moonsault. I think Scott Norton's supposed to catch him, but they weren't in the right spot, so he just kind of shoulder blocks him. I gave it a star and 3/4. Scott Norton squashed him, and I thought it was a little sloppy.
I gave this 2 stars. I don't know. I have a very soft spot for Scott Norton and his matches. I loved him in this time period. Like he just fucks people up. I just love that every single thing that Silver King did, he started the match with a missile drop kick, and literally Scott Norton just like takes it to the shoulder and just looks at him like, what the fuck was that? Like a fly just bounced off of him. And then I'll be honest, I don't think he was was meant to catch him with the moonsault. I think literally he was just supposed to stand up straight and just let him just take it, like, and let him just kind of bounce off. But yeah, the whole point is that, like, how are you going to get this guy off his feet? The dude's like has the density of like a dying star. Like, how is Silver King gonna do anything to get him off his feet? I said, as long as Scott Norton is being fed people that I can believe he's going to get fucked up, I'm all about it. And Silver King, unfortunately, he fits that description pretty well. And Scott Norton yelling into the camera is probably still one of my favorite things about him, because I have no idea what he's saying. It's like he closes his eyes and just yells things like, come and get some of this. You can't get some of this. Like that. I love it. It feels like 80s, Saturday morning cartoon wrestling again. So there's a part of me that does enjoy that, because he is like a legitimate badass and he's huge, but like when he actually talks, he sounds like a badass, but he doesn't actually say things that are badass. He just kind of just like, you don't want none of this. And I'm like, yeah, that's obvious.
After this, we get our 4th replay of the night. DJ Ran on Nitro is booted out by Hennig and Wyndham, of course, because they hate rap music.
I thought it was because they hated Surge.
Yeah, well, I don't know. Is Surge here yet?
Oh, it's been there. Oh, for sure it's been there. It's been there since 98.
Okay. Conan and Rey Mysterio, they, of course, like rap music, so they've got something to say. And it leads to Conan being hogtied during a match later that night. So this is going to be Rey Mysterio getting his revenge here on Thunder in a match that happened before all that took place, but is actually being shown afterwards as he's wrestling Curt Hennig. Rey's sporting a bald head now completely. But this match was really good. I mean, it's Hennig and Mysterio at their finest. Back and forth. We do get a Shattered Dreams almost spot from Rey Mysterio, which I guess is totally legal, which was interesting.
A well-timed drop kick, as Tenay would say, when I would call it a kick to the dick.
Right. We do get Hennig's Rey is going to work Hennig's leg a lot, and Hennig sells it phenomenally in this match. The whole time, even with a lot of times the leg gets worked, and then not 20 minutes later, but 10 minutes later, it's totally forgotten about. Hennig sells this thing to the very end, which is great. Hennig pays tribute to Rick Rude, who passed away about a month and a half ago at this point, with the little pelvic, gyration and a point to the sky.
That's too hot for TBS.
Eventually, Ray's going to go for the Bronco Buster, but Bobby Duncan Jr. comes in and stops him. That brings the DQ finish. I gave it 2.5 stars. Like I said, I thought it was a great match. The two put on a really good back and forth. And, if it's not a DQ finish, it's probably a 3-star match, but I get why you're doing the 3-star, the DQ finish here, because you're still pushing, Conan, Ray, Duncan, and Hennig.
I agree. I also gave it 2.5 stars. It's probably Curt's best match I've seen since watching Thunder. I wouldn't go as far as saying this is Curt at his best. Maybe Curt as his best ever since having a fucked up back and a torn up knee. I think it's about as good as he can do. And you also got to give credit to Ray, because Ray does a very good job of making people look good as well. But once again, I think both of them know how to do that. They both know how to get the best out of a good athletic wrestler. And obviously, both of them are that. So you put both of them in the ring, you're gonna get good chemistry. They both can wrestle in their sleep. So I wasn't surprised by how good it was, but it's still that doesn't mean that I was less happy for it, because it was a good match to watch. And I agree, it was an expected DQ finish. There's no sense in anyone going over this early in the feud, and especially on Thunder. Like, if you're gonna start trading off wins with actual clean victories. I think you're already starting the feud on the wrong path.
After the match, Kidman shows up and Conan both come in. They help Ray, and then we move to our next replay of the night. It's Macho Man. He's in a limo on Nitro. It looks like he's got all of his women with him, and they're driving out of the arena. It looks like all of a sudden they're stopped. They're kind of surrounded by large cars. Nash gets out of a big septic car and starts filling the limousine roof down into the ladies and Savage with all kinds of poo. And they're not happy as they're covered in poo. And then we go to our next replay of the night. It's Dean Malenko telling Arn Anderson that he no longer has faith in Arn. He doesn't believe in him anymore. He storms out of the ring. Piper tells Flair that his cabinet is falling apart. That, Rick and Piper are fighting. It looks like the Horsemen are breaking up. And that leads to our main event match, Chris Benoit and Ric Flair. Ric Flair accompanied to the ring by Asia.
You know what I just realized?
What's that?
And I know that maybe we should have already noticed this, but I never thought about it until now. So, Asia, right?
Yeah.
I started thinking to myself, why are they calling her Asia? And then I started
China.
Yeah, I swear to God, I didn't even think about that until just now. I literally, I'm sorry. I understand that I would consider myself a little bit of a wrestling historian, but I just thought to myself, holy shit, did WCW Creative just go, hey, you know how China's over and everything? And they're like, yeah. They're like, well, why don't we get ourselves a big buff woman valet? And they're like, oh, it's a good idea. What should we call her? Well, what's bigger than China? I'm like, well, the entire continent of Asia. Exactly.
I mean, that's probably exactly how it went down.
That's I would love to be a fly on the wall and just be like, just put my like hand on my forehead and just be like, I can't believe that's how they workshop that name. But I mean, obviously it's a dig, but at the same time, like if it's a dig on a wrestler in another, like, I don't know, to me that would just seem like, I'm sure I knew about that or I recognized it when I was younger, but like during the time, and just kind of, maybe I just glossed over it now. But I've never been a big fan of if you're going against another company, why would you recognize the other company by doing a spoof of guys from that company? Like if you're gonna make like a buff woman and call her Asia, people are gonna be like, oh, that's just a China ripoff. You don't want to be a ripoff of a better product. And I'm sure that's not what they were thinking. They probably just thought like, okay, well, she'll relate, and the relatability is more important than, so what if it's a knockoff? It's all about the relatability. It's all about being like, it's just us taking a stab at the WWF in 1999, who clearly has a chokehold at this point on WCW. It wouldn't have been my choice. I get what they did. I just wanted to just full disclosure. I completely forgot that's why they did that.
Well, fair enough. Hopefully, if our listeners out there, if they didn't catch on to it, they now know. As for this match, really a classic. They gave us 16 minutes here of Benoit and Flair, which when you give them that much time, they can really make a match out of it. You get Benoit locking on the figure four, and he did it in a fashion that actually made it look like he was trying to, put the pressure down on Flair, which I appreciate it. Larry's trying to tell the story that the old guys, can still wrestle, and these, they're not holding the young guys back, as, a lot of them are trying to say. We get backslides in here. We get sleepers reversed into sleepers, back and forth. Figure four by Flair. Benoit's going to flip it over. Another backslide, diving headbutt. Here comes the 3 count, and DDP pulls out the ref. Bam Bam and DDP come in. The two of them and Flair beat up on Benoit. I gave it 2.5 stars. I thought it was another one with a DQ finish. I didn't love the DQ finish, but I understand it, I guess. It was a very good match with just that frustrating ending.
It's one of those things where, and we'll talk about it when we do our overall thoughts. I gave this 2 3/4 stars. It's about as good of a match as they could probably do with each other, to be completely honest, without, I guess, having a clean finish. Because you're not gonna. I feel like with these two guys, a clean finish will not make sense. If this was a pay-per-view match, sure, a clean finish. On a pre-taped Thunder, fuck no. I mean, once again, you kind of have to look at the product that you're watching and be like, okay, I get it. Flair is fighting Piper for ownership of the company again, and it would be kind of a weird dichotomy to discuss a week where Flair loses clean to Benoit, then has to fight a bigger match against, I guess you want to say a bigger opponent in Roddy Piper. We can agree or disagree on that all we want. It was definitely, the match was kind of slow and bland at the start, but definitely the last 6 minutes or so was just classic Flair.
It built up. Yeah,
it definitely did.
Fine.
A lot of near falls, and I said Flair maybe past his prime, but even in 1999, Flair is still, he's always been, when he was a full-time wrestler, he was always in great cardio shape. And you have to be if you're going to wrestle 16 minutes against Benoit, because Benoit could wrestle for days. I don't know if there's anybody who's ever lived that's probably was ever better, like, ring shape. Talk about a guy like who could probably wrestle for 60 minutes, and let it be nothing. I think of Benoit in his prime and Flair in his prime. Those are guys that I see like that's how they made their living, was 40-minute matches. So obviously Flair's a little older now, but I'm sure Flair, if he was conditioned a little bit and knew he had to prepare for it, he could have easily done a 45-minute match even in 99. The DQ makes sense as much as I'm sure we didn't want to see it, but like I said before, I don't see anyone going clean unless it's blatant interference and Flair goes over. That was the only way I would have saw an actual pinfall or submission, or someone not being able to respond but passing out to the figure four or something like that. I only saw Flair coming out on top in that regard.
No, fair enough. That said, that ended the show. That was our show. That was our Thunder. What did you think about this week's episode?
You know what? Overall, a decent to good Thunder, especially the main event brought it up a notch or two. I'll take 16 minutes of Benoit and Flair, regardless of the time period and regardless of the clean finish or not. Though I think the one thing I wanted to talk to you about, maybe if we wanted to, once again, you can just say I agree or I don't agree. We can keep it at that. The idea of protecting wrestlers. So what I mean by that is that you got these guys who have these big matches coming up. For example, Flair taking on Piper, or like Macho Man taking on Nash or something like that for the world title. And you see things like, so a lot of the questions we've asked ourselves is, what kind of big match really has Macho Man been in? What kind of like meaningful victories has he had? And the answer is none. And the reason why they're doing that is because they're protecting him, especially with Flair. Has Flair lost a match since this match has been booked? No. Has he been in a lot of matches? Yes. Why are they doing that? Because they're protecting the wrestler for the big matches coming up. And I get it. It makes total sense to do it. But I can understand the idea that it gets old after a while. That to me, like, I used to really enjoy. I don't remember if it was John Cena or Shawn Michaels who would classically lose a match or two cleanly. Well, I wouldn't say cleanly. Like, there might be some interference or whatever the case may be, some trickery or whatever to cause them to lose, and it kind of creates like this, like, oh, is he going to be in the right state of mind going into the pay-per-view for this big, this big match, for a world title or whatever the case may be. It's always good to raise the stakes a little bit by having your hero actually go in with maybe either like getting his shit kicked in a little bit more or losing a match, having the heel having a one-up. Those are always storylines that always interested me because it makes the victory all the sweeter for the person who may have not had a leg up going into the pay-per-view. So once again, we're talking about these wrestlers who are being protected so that when they're going to go in these matches, they're either going to go over like they should, or they're just going to get beat up, but then there's going to be a DQ. It makes them look weak. Macho Man does not look like a guy who deserves to be a world title contender based on his actions. Ric Flair has already lost to Roddy Piper in the last pay-per-view, and yet we're doing it again. And Roddy Piper and for the most part, Flair has not looked stronger or more focused or more ready to take on Roddy Piper with the matches he's been in. But they're doing it because they want to protect the wrestler. They don't want him to go in with a loss, make it seem like he doesn't deserve to be in this pay-per-view spotlight. But like I said, that gets kind of old hat when that's like, it's kind of like going to the well too often. Other than that, and like I said, I'll if you want to mention anything during your spot, that's cool. I am unapologetic that I love Scott Norton in 1999 and 98. Like, it is a travesty that he has a feud with the Cat. He needs something better. He deserves something better. The other thing I liked about this show, there really wasn't a match on the card I would consider a dud or a subpar match. So, things like that you got to hang their hat on. My only real complaint with this show was that after all of this discussion of like, oh, these are actually some pretty good matches, we had a 16-minute main event. Well, what happens when you have a 16-minute main event and a lot of recaps? You only get 6 matches for the whole show. 3 of them were DQ finishes. So when 50% of your matches end in a kind of like a washed finish, it's not exactly the ratio that I'm looking for in a wrestling show.
I sometimes notice that. I guess I didn't really pay attention to that this time because I thought the quality of matches for the most part were, much like this show, middling to okay, with some pretty good matches that had poor finishes but were understandable and excusable finishes. So, that's kind of how we opened the show up, and that's how I feel. It was a wrestling show. We didn't push much storyline, except Bryan Knobbs is now part of the First Family, so I don't want to bury that by any means. That is a big deal to find that out. But outside of that, they kind of continue to push the feuds without really doing anything out of the norm other than giving you entertaining wrestling matches. And I guess I'm okay with it. It was fine. And better than some of the shit that we've been dealing with recently. So I don't know. You can't ask for much more than that, right?
No, I suppose. Like I said, I don't want to sound like the guy that's complaining about that, because for the most part, I enjoyed the show. But once again, I mean, I feel like this podcast is both a recap of the show plus our commentary, plus kind of pointing out the obvious, like, what the fuck were you thinking type of moments in the show where either it just felt like it was so outlandish and crazy, to the lazy writing or whatever the case would be, the poor production. But when there's a show where there's not really a complaint about the production, there's not really much of a complaint about the matches. We got to have something to talk about, right?
Yeah, no, that's fair. That said, that is the show this week. If you haven't yet subscribed, go do it. Leave us a review. Let us know how we are doing. I mean, fuck, we have put through 65 episodes reviewing WCW Thunder. Throw us a bone here. Give us a follow on social media. Twitter, Facebook, you name it, at Thundercraps. And, of course, you can always go to thundercraps.com to hear all of those 65 episodes. And then go check out the Go Home show for Great American Bash, or Bash at the Beach, 1999. This is Thunder 66. It is June 10th, 1999. We'll watch it. We'll review it. And we'll be here and right back here next week discussing it. For Kyle Hogan, I am Josh Kaiser, and we will see you next time on the Thundercraps podcast.
We are agingly out of time. See ya.